Manas, welcome back. How are you, my friend?
Good morning. Good morning. Should I turn on my video or that's good enough?
You can, if you want to show that handsome mug, I'll
Oh,
join you.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll join you.
Oh, I need to adjust the camera here just a second. All right. It's a bit in the morning here, so still kind of the lights are on.
Well, when
How are
I
you?
get up enough, I hear owls. Okay,
Oh,
so
wow.
that tells you what time
Uh,
in the morning I get up. It's 4. So, a lot of things circulating around the energy patch, and we broke that 94 support, have traded down to about $85. Looks like it's trying to come out of here. Really the biggest economic and energy story is the crisis in Europe and how they're going to be able to heat their homes this winter. Do you think there's going to be anything to help them get through it without making decisions on groceries or firewood?
I think they already started conserving energy and spending less and doing a lot of things. I am afraid that the decisions made by the European governments in the last few years were the wrong decisions and they are paying a heavy price for it. One of the major issues, while everyone is focused on the impact of Russia and Ukraine, the bigger issue right now and the impact could be way higher than Russia and Ukraine when we talk about the impact of the drought. We have a global drought hitting the world and affecting the energy markets in a way that we have not seen in our lifetime.
You're talking about hydroelectricity with all the,
This
major
is
part of it. Yeah.
This is 1 of 10.
Okay.
1 of 10.
I'm
I'm not
concerned about that.
I'm not going to go over the 10, but think about it this way. We need, of course, in terms of hydro, when the water levels go down, they cannot generate hydro, and therefore they need to look for a substitute. Here is the problem for Europe. Europe increased its dependence on Norway significantly after the Ukraine crisis.
Okay.
And Norway depends heavily on hydro. And because of that, since hydro, and we have a drought in Norway, and hydro is lower, now they need to use their own gas at the expense of the Europeans.
Okay.
So from where the Europeans are going to get the gas? But this is not only the story of Europe. If you look at China, for example, we have the same problem.
Factories because of
Absolutely.
the drought. Yeah.
So here is the problem. You need water to generate hydroelectricity. You need water to generate electricity from coal, because we cannot use the coal without the water. We need the water throughout the process, and even at the end, basically, to prevent mercury from getting to the environment, or sulfur dioxide or others. We need water. If there is no water, then even we cannot produce electricity from coal. And as you know, they are switching back to coal.
Yeah.
We cannot, right now, the factories that being closed in China, what are they? Well, there are fertilizer plants. We need that. Yeah. There are solar panel plants. So all of a sudden it's affecting the green energy. It's part of the wind turbine plants. So it's again affecting green energy. But this is not the only story. Since the Rhine River level is down, and other rivers around the world, including places like in the Western United States or in Brazil or others, but those ships and barges cannot go through. If you look at the Rhine, what are those barges carrying? They are carrying coal. They are carrying gasoline. They are carrying diesel. They are carrying all kinds of different types of oils and greases and other things that the factories need. So anyway you look at it, this drought is affecting every single source of energy, every single part of the industry.
That's a very important point, and something that most people don't think about when they hear about water shortages. They worry about, I may not be able to keep my lawn. I'll have to take shorter showers. Of course, agriculture, you need water to grow the crops, but I really didn't put it together except the hydro.
Well,
Of how
here is more.
critical.
I mean, this is what I told you, just part of the story. Look at what
Yeah,
happened in Brazil last year. In Brazil, they had a drought. And Brazil, as you know, depends heavily on ethanol for transportation, the flex
right,
fuel.
right.
And what happened is because of the drought, they couldn't produce that much cane, that the sugar cane, and therefore their ethanol production declined. That hit their transportation sector. What happened? They imported ethanol from the United States.
Okay.
So the
So
drought
I mean,
basically,
it's not even a question. So even if you had the supply of oil that everyone thinks is a problem that that Putin is withholding, or perhaps I want to get to it. I want to ask you about Biden's fist pump in Saudi Arabia, and everyone thinks that if we just had more oil, everything would be okay, but it's so much deeper than that. If it's about
well, here
the
is one more,
water.
Dale. Here is one more, because this is really scary. Right now, some European
I
countries,
already need a tranquilizer. It's only like 5:40. Go ahead.
as you know, they are returning back to coal. We need water. They are
Yeah,
returning back to nuclear. We need water.
yeah,
But here is the catch. They are debating whether to go back and frack shale deposits,
they need
and they
water.
cannot do that without water.
Yeah,
Now, if they here in Texas and other places, if the drought became really severe, I mean, here where I am in North Texas, we hadn't had rain in 2 months. We just had rain this week for the first time, and which
in
led
Dallas, and now, yeah, so when
correct.
we get rain, though, Anas, we're getting these downpours that are like 1,000-year rain events, like in Kentucky and St. Louis, and we can't capture that water, can we?
Correct, correct. But the idea here is if we end up with severe drought, then this production that the Biden administration is counting on to come from shale is not going to happen, because we need a lot of water to produce oil and gas from shale. So when you talk about the drought and severe drought, it impacts every single energy source. It impacts every segment of the industry. And we end up with a situation where the impact of the drought is more severe than the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And here is another catch. Decision makers can change their decision regarding Ukraine and the politics of Russia. They can control that. European leaders can switch and say, what the heck with Ukraine?
Right.
We don't care about Ukrainians. We are going to deal with Putin. We don't want our people to die.
That's his goal.
But they cannot do
Make
that
water.
with drought.
Yeah.
They cannot do anything, period. They have
And the Fed too. I mean, when you think about the Fed trying to control inflation, and you bring up water, I mean, I used to say, well, they can't print corn. So, I mean, how are they going to bring down food prices? And now you bring up water. That's only in God's hands. How do we muddle through this? Are we really maybe on the edge of society and economic commerce really breaking down completely because of a drought? That a drought could kill world economies.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the problems with the drought is the government has no choice but to provide subsidies. But for how long? If the drought lasts for 5, 6, 7 years, the government even cannot afford to spend more money. I mean, that's why people will die. That's why animals will die. We will lose farmland. It's a really serious problem. And the issue here, and I hate to make any discussions about climate change. And the issue basically is not whether I am for it or against it, etc. But here is the thing: all the flooding you mentioned in Louisville, in Kentucky, or in Dallas or others, if you read what the experts said about flooding, it has nothing to do with human activities. It's the media that is making up this story. But the actual reports from the IPCC or others, all of them basically showed that flooding has nothing to do with the human activity, which means that we really have no solution, no immediate solution. But there were other stories, especially last week, about the oil market. Probably you've seen that the prediction about the OPEC Plus defending $90. That prediction was made in June, and we heard from the Saudi oil minister just a couple of days ago. Basically, they are defending a level around that. That's 90 Brent, by the way. And he had an interview with Bloomberg, but it was a written interview, which means that they submitted the questions, and then probably several experts worked on it.
What a boring thing to do.
It is, but sometimes, especially depend on what the source is, because
we're not going to move world market. You will. You'll move world markets with a word, but.
Correct, but the problem is they got burned so many times by the media kind of changing what they are talking about or changing the perception. Correct, correct. But the Saudi statement basically is very important in various ways and contradictory at the same time, because they are saying, look, their view basically is this media talk about recession that reduced oil prices is political. And based on their view, the market is tight. The physical market is tight, and therefore the media is kind of like directed to emphasize the bearish sentiment, and therefore those participating in the market just left. As you know, the longs position just declined substantially. The problem is, if you look at OPEC report itself, OPEC report was bearish because they were expecting a surplus in 2022 and a surplus in 2023. So they cannot have it both ways by saying, look, the physical market is tight, there is no justification for the decline, while their report basically is bearish. And that's why we need to pay attention to the next OPEC report to see whether they are going to change the tone or not.
When is that?
It is going to come around the 11th, I think the 11th or 12th of next month.
Okay.
But the issue here is that they always complained about the role of speculators. As prices went up, they say it's not our fault, that's speculation. Now it's going down, they are saying it's speculations, but they said, oh, we want them back because we want more liquidity in the market and we want them to come back to the market. Well, you cannot have it both ways.
Yeah, has volumes thinned out in many markets? Volumes have really kind of dried up. In the bond market, etc. The Fed's trying to save the bond market, but what's liquidity like on the cash side of the energy market?
I think that's where the Saudis are trying to emphasize the point that you guys forget about the paper market, focus on the cash market, and the cash market is really tight. But my main point here, and especially to the media, now I would like to warn here that sometimes officials say statements they don't mean that much, and it's a very well targeted statement, and we analysts come in and make a big thing out of it. And probably what I am saying next fits into this, but I don't know. But it is my job basically to bring this up. The timing of this statement and the interview is very important because it came in before the president of China visits Saudi Arabia. And the Chinese economy,
that's before his election.
Correct. And I mean, this is like in the next probably couple of weeks or so. And you cannot separate those statements from the visit. And the reason why, because the Chinese economy is really in bad shape. Yeah. They are cutting their budgets significantly, whether on federal level or the regional levels. And they really want oil prices to be in the 60s. Okay. So what we've seen, basically, the Saudis are telling the Biden administration, look, when you come to Saudi Arabia, don't talk about oil. Oil is a side issue. It's a done deal. We are not going to increase production. Don't expect lower prices. Now they are sending the same message to the Chinese. Say, look, you want to talk about investment, you want to talk about other things, etc. Please do not talk about oil prices. And therefore, they did it before the visit. So I think it is a targeted message to the Chinese that forget about talking about it, forget about the 60s and 70s that you are asking for. And the Chinese reaction is very clear. They already built massive strategic petroleum reserves. and they are going to use it. And the Saudis basically are telling them, you know what? Just use your reserves, because it is in the interest of Saudis to lower those reserves and keep them low. The Saudis' objective was to keep reserves low and to keep inventories low. But since the Russians are selling at a discount and China resorted to the lockdown, as you know, in recent months, so they were able to build that inventories regardless. If it wasn't for the lockdown,
they can't reopen. They can't reopen with their COVID policy.
So without the lockdown, inventories would have been low, and the storage would have been low, and the Saudis' wish would have been met. But they couldn't, of course, control that. The other issue related to this is it really a message to the Biden administration on one side and to other OPEC members and to the Russians at the same time that, look, OPEC plus deal is going to end at the end of the year, but this is not the end of it. We are going to have a new deal, and we are going to be ready for a recession. We are going to be ready for a decline in demand. If something happened, we need to cut again. So in a sense, this was a preemptive strike and a message to the rest of OPEC members and the Russians, etc. And it seems that the Russians are willing to cut in case of a recession, because that's the message they sent to
cut prices. Their production's down quite a bit, isn't it? Because of
not much as some people expected. Their production of petroleum products from refineries declined. It's been picking up recently, but the whole idea here is, as expected from, I mean, if you look at the sanctions literature in the last 100 years, it supports everything you see today. And those who were saying that we are going to see a major decline in Russian production, they did not really study the literature of sanctions. If you look at it, it is very clear that there is no way you can kind of control or reduce Russian production or exports unless you use the Navy and blockade all the ports. That's the lesson from history. Otherwise, Iran survived the sanctions. Cuba, despite it's a very poor country, it survived the sanctions for 50 years. So to say that all of a sudden we are going to impose sanctions and Russian production will decline, we are not talking about anyone here. We are talking about a fox. Of course, we are talking about Putin. So to think that just making statements is going to make Putin just yield to it is a complete nonsense.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the two greatest economic powers on the globe are going hand in hand to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has leverage. You know, it almost looks like Russia and Saudi Arabia hold all the cards for what's going on in the world.
It looks like it, and this is. I'm glad you mentioned this, because in these statements that we mentioned to the media a couple of days ago, it is a message to the Biden administration and Iran at the same time. And they are telling Biden, look, if you are going to bring Iran to the fold, if you are going to have that nuclear deal with Iran, and you think that this is going to help you by increasing production and lowering oil prices, guess what? We are not happy with the deal. We are not happy with what we are doing with Iran. We are not happy that Iran is supporting the Houthis who attack us every day. So what we are going to do is we will cut production if Iranian production increases. So we are going to leave room for them, but don't expect that to be an extra.
You know, they talk a lot about, you know, Israel. A lot of people in Israel say that they're not going to allow Iran to go nuclear. And I believe that Saudi Arabia probably feels the same way.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, isn't there a chance that these two countries are allies to take out their facilities before they get there?
There are 2 points here. The first point is, I think as been posted in the media and everyone knows that there is some sort of communication between the two. And but one of the reasons why why Biden went to Saudi Arabia basically is hoping to create some setup or some environment for more cooperation between the Gulf states and Israel. As you know, there are two countries that normalize relations with Israel, that Bahrain and the UAE. But the issue here is, if you really look at the Israeli view, and I'm just talking about common sense here, okay? From an Israeli point of view, Every time the Israelis get mad and they tell the United States, I'm going to bomb Iran, the U.S. administration give them like $700-800 million.
Okay.
Look, I would love to continue this for 100 years. I want the Iranians to do what they are doing today forever. This is a very good way.
Yeah.
So, and this been going on for a long time. But this brings us to the point about the Iran deal, because I think audience should understand this, that if we end up with a deal anytime in the next couple of weeks,
a crappy deal, a worse deal than before we pulled out.
I mean, whatever it is, in terms of the oil market, it has no immediate impact on the physical market because they are selling.
So we're not going to get a quick $5 break the day they sign the crappy deal.
Correct. But I would like to clarify one point about the floating storage, because some people are saying, look, they have a massive amount of floating storage and they can dump that on the market and that affect oil prices, etc. No matter what, any way you look at it, just the deal announcement is going to lower prices, no matter what. It's going to be for a few days until people realize what's going on. But the story of the floating storage basically has been missing from the market. People think they have floating storage because of the sanctions. No, they have floating storage because it's mostly condensates, and most of that is coming from gas wells. And they depend heavily on gas in the winter. And most of their fields are what we call wet gas, which means that to produce natural gas, they need to produce the liquids, a massive amount of liquids. They export gas to Iraq. They produce a lot of liquids. So what they are going to do with that liquid? They can either dump it or store it. So they have to store it. So the existence of condensate storage in 50, 60, 70 million barrels is not related to the sanctions per se. It's related to the massive production of natural gas, which means that if we sign a deal tomorrow, it's not necessarily that they will market all of that. The second point, I think we still have, what, 4 minutes or something like this? Second point, which is important, is this. Historically, we've seen the Iranian government, once they know that a deal is imminent, they cut their exports and they start storing the real oil, in a sense, which an API below 40 degrees. That's the real oil. And they store probably 30 to 40 million barrels a day. This has a very important political and economic implications, because the idea here is once the deal is signed, they can flood the market with that. They are sending a message to OPEC members, yes, I can increase production and exports. They are sending a message to Europe and the United States, yes, I can do that, and therefore I have the ability. They are sending a message to their population, look at the benefits of the deal, because there are a lot of people who are opposing the deal. Look, the benefits is we are exporting massive quantity and we are earning a lot of money. So there are benefits to that. That's going to be sold publicly in the international market at the world price. So yes, a deal is going to lower prices, but what the price that Iran will get out of it is higher, and probably way higher than the discounted price in the black market. And that's the economic benefit of that.
All right. So give me a range for the fall and winter of WTI. You usually have a range in mind. It's tougher now, isn't it?
Well, of course, as you know, I mean, talking about these things is very tough, whether we have a recession, we don't have a recession.
Oil's very fluid. Energy's fluid.
Correct. But I mean, at least we have some principles to depend on. And the main principles basically is Russian oil is going to be in the market. The big decline is not going to happen, as some people are saying. If Iran comes back, we will see an impact within several months. We're not going to see an immediate impact. In terms of China, China will use their SPR as long as prices are high, period. And the problem is, and this is probably, if anyone is listening today to this, the main message of today's meeting or interview is this. If you look at the world oil market, it is literally China versus OPEC plus. It's not Biden versus OPEC. It's not Europe versus OPEC. It's China versus OPEC plus. And as I mentioned on Twitter, the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, are going to put a ceiling on oil prices. OPEC plus is going to put a floor. So oil prices are going to fluctuate between the OPEC floor and the SPR ceiling. Now, some people are saying, well, Biden already used the SPR and therefore no more by the end of the year. Well, when we talk about the SPR, it's not really about Biden. We've been talking about the SPR since 2018.
Jimmy Carter.
And we were talking about China since 2018. It's the Chinese SPR that prevented oil prices from reaching 100 in 2018. It was the Chinese SPR that prevented oil prices from reaching 100 in 2021. So it is really the SPR of the Chinese. What Biden did was exceptional by any means in terms of the massive amount that he released and planning to release. But the issue is still valid, that the bottom is set, or the floor is set by OPEC, the ceiling is set by the SPR, and the Chinese will do every possible way to keep prices down. It's the Chinese economy right now that's going to really determine the fate of the oil market. It's not Europe, it's not the United States. And when we talk about the drought, I think the Ukraine is going to be a side issue in front of that drought issue.
Okay, I have one question from one of our attendees. Please ask Mr. Anas about Bahrain has 80 billion barrels of shale oil, said want to produce them many times. Once claimed is in competition for his oil. Is there any hope or just some official claims?
Sorry, what is the deal here? I mean, I did not.
I think he's talking about, will Bahrain develop and produce the 80 billion barrel of shale oil they say they have?
Well, we don't know much about it. I think I know the person whom you are asking because he did ask this question yesterday.
Mahdi.
Yes.
They
they are
he
working on
follows
it.
you around everywhere, huh?
They mentioned this. They are working on it. There is unconventional in those countries. Saudi Arabia already developed them and working on more development. But not more than that. So we'll see what's going on. Do we still have a minute or two, or we are done?
Yeah, we're
because I have one slide to show quickly.
Go ahead. Okay, share your screen. It's at the bottom.
Okay.
Green button.
This is you see that screen says conclusions?
Yes.
Okay. This was a conclusion of a presentation I gave just last week in Colorado, and I would like to go through it quickly. Basically, that when we talk about medium term and long term, we are heading for unprecedented energy crisis, and these are the reasons why. So each one of those is a presentation, by the way. So the outlooks are underestimating oil demand, ESG and carbon neutrality accounting. This is going to be the matter of all Enrons, as we mentioned last time on your show. Renewable energy. People must understand that even if Europe doubles and triples and quadruple solar and wind, it has no impact on oil, because oil is rarely used in power generation. Hydrogen will maintain demand for oil and gas. Vehicle fuel economy is way overestimated. Electric and hybrid vehicles, their impact is overestimated. I'm not talking about their numbers. I think we are going to have hundreds of millions of them, but their impact is overestimated. Petrochemicals, the demand for petrochemicals is going to increase the demand for oil and gas, and we need petrochemicals for everything green you can imagine.
Everything.
Okay, so we need that, and the demand is going to go up. And in terms of crude quality, if my theory is correct, we have failure of green policies, and the demand for oil and gas is going to go up. Then the shale will benefit because of the gasoline. The gasoline demand is going to be way higher than expected, and shale companies are going to benefit from that.
Okay, and now hearing your analysis for 30 minutes in a very murky environment and a very conflicting, confusing environment is like a tall glass of water. Thank you so much for refreshing our minds with what we have to face ahead, and appreciate all the visits and how much we learn from you every time you're here, my trading water.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Inshallah, Anas.
Inshallah. Bye.
Okay, so that's a wrap, everyone. One of the best out there. I would watch this video again and pay attention to what Anas says. And, you know, I guess we can't give up hope. All right. Take it easy, everyone. You could join the team in 13 minutes on the morning edge. Good hunting the rest of the day. We'll see you tomorrow. And really, remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. There's more to life than just pips, guys. Adios.
Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with ForexAnalytix. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like these videos, share them, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the content that we provide here for free. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.